should be forgotten, like so many of the other Japanese horror remakes of the early 2000s. Films about cell phones and the horrors of the World Wide Web. But somehow, The Ring remains relevant. Until recently, I couldn't quite place why I kept returning to this movie. Years after its relevancy should have ended. But I think I finally figured it out. The first task Gore Verbinski had was to convince the audience that the premise wasn't ridiculous. And that was absolutely an uphill battle, and one that he lost with some of the audience. In Roger Ebert's review, he wrote, "Rarely has a more serious effort produced a less serious result than in The Ring. The kind of dread, dark horror where you better hope nobody in the audience snickers, because the film teeters right on the edge of the ridiculous." On the face of it, I don't disagree. This premise does give early 2000s chain email energy. And honestly, the sequels, The Ring 2 and Rings, that if you don't know, that is a real movie that came out in 2017, only bolster Mr. Ebert's claims that this concept isn't scary. So then what is Gore Verbinski and his collaborators doing that the others can't manage to do? One of the first decisions that this remake has going for it is to not mess with the original's formula. Characters, plot, and general structure are remarkably similar, but that doesn't mean that the filmmakers didn't make massive changes. Verbinski's approach is far more stylistic, perhaps mythic, which brings its own set of tools to unsettle the viewer. When our main character watches the tape is a very good example of what I'm talking about. In the remake, Rachel goes to this forgotten cabin in the woods. The sun moving through the red tree, bathing the cabin in foreboding red. It is easily one of the most stylistic swings during the entire runtime of the movie. So it was a surprise to see that even the very concept of the quote-unquote burning tree wasn't present until the Verbinski version. I'm interested in these changes, large and small, because it was no guarantee that the remake would have anything similar to the Japanese version. Honestly, the fact that a movie got greenlit where the main character is a working single mother is awesome, and that she's a mom is not her defining characteristic. Even though being a mom and motherhood is a major theme in this movie, with Rachel, who clearly had an accidental pregnancy that resulted in Aiden.
Rachel and I were...
Yummy. Mom's told me that story.
Who would do nothing but protect him. And ultimately saves him, even if that means releasing the curse of Samara out into the world. Now, I like this change because Rachel is distant from Aiden the entire runtime of the film. And at the very end, she realizes a moral lesson. That sometimes kids are just reaching out.
Sometimes children yell or cry or draw pictures.
So yeah, her arc is learning how to be a better mom. That doesn't work so much, which... But over the course of the film, you get to see so many different qualities of Rachel. She's still an incredibly well-rounded character. And the movie kind of undercuts this arc completely. We're all familiar with the famous twist ending. But one of the interesting thematic twists is the scene that precedes that, where they set it up for you to expect it to be like the I love you son, and instead of I love you Rachel, it's I love you mom moment to happen. But it never does, because it's interrupted by the twist, by the fact that they should have never helped Samara. And just because the Japanese original had elements of this formula does not mean Hollywood would honor that. I mean, just take a look at literally all of the other horrible Japanese remakes that came out during this era. And that's all the proof you need. Verbinski and collaborators kept these elements and protected them. I am positive there was an executive in the process wondering if they could just take that prologue where it's the two high schoolers and expand that into the entire film. This was all the rage in the mid to late 90s I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, the Halloween franchise, and Final Destination. And I know this is true. I know there is at least one executive asking for this because the 2017 Rings, that is the movie where you follow teens for the entire runtime. The Ring came out at the death of the analog way of living. The internet had gone mainstream. Cell phones were starting to replace home phones. Within a year of a movie about a killer VHS tape, the DVD would take over the market as the dominant home video format. Perhaps it was because the VHS was dying that Verbinski didn't do any highly stylized shots of technology, instead focusing on mundane computer screens. There's a deleted scene of a camera flying through a digital VCR player that really highlights what I mean. By removing shots like this, it protects the movie from becoming extremely dated, like many of its other contemporaries. Actually, there is another deleted scene that takes place in a blockbuster. So by deleting that, I mean, that probably saved them from looking dated more than anything else. For just a moment, I thought this was the key reason The Ring worked. I thought it worked because it spoke so well to this transitional anxiety of going from analog to digital. You can see how the internet is actively replacing books and libraries as a resource for finding information. And I love that the piece of technology to highlight this anxiety was a VHS tape. Ubiquitous within the time, but also currently dying during its release. Has a bit of ironic poetry to it. But that's not quite it. Tons of movies have similar premises about tech anxiety. Many of them released around the same time, and they have all faded away. So there must be something else that's keeping this movie current. Let's do some rapid fire reasons why I love this movie. Every time I watch The Ring, I'm surprised by how much restraint there is in the cinematography. In general, the camera is pretty static. There's some exceptions with Steadicam and some dolly movements, but typically those dolly movements are just a push in or a truck right, just to establish us into the scene. That said, I absolutely love the handheld used in this movie. Outside of a couple one-off shots, it's only used in 2 scenes. One, where Richard Morgan very inventively decides to unalive himself. And the second is right after Rachel has seen Noah's dead body. She hides in the corner as his current girlfriend goes up to see him. I love this so much, that Rachel is just too petrified, too terrified, and too upset to warn her, to stop her. It's just one of those oddly specific human moments of grief and terror. And this handheld camera, subtly shaking as she hides, adds so much. One of the other things The Ring does so well is jump scares. They use it in such a smart way. The Ring has probably one of the most famous jump scares of all time. Yeah, I would say of all time. What do you think? Another thing I'm very impressed by is how consistent every performance is. Like every single actor knows the tone that Verbinski was looking for. They all hit the same register, even if they're only there for 1 or 2 scenes. Like Ruth, Rachel's sister. She gives a great performance and really grounds the movie by making us believe she is a grieving mother. And I think this is a testament to Gore Verbinski's direction, because he has a lot of different one-scene characters that pop in throughout the movie, and a lot of them are used for comedic relief. So for them to still all fit in the world must have been a challenge. Okay, let's talk about the other ones. So let's try to extract all the good that these movies do, and then contrast them with the original as to why they don't quite stack up. Earlier, I mentioned that I really liked that Rachel's storyline wasn't defined by her being a mom. Well, in The Ring 2, her storyline is defined by her being a mom. Honestly, theoretically, I get this. It was a major theme in the first film, but one that rested in the background. So in the second film, when they decide to explore more into Rachel's distant relationship with Aiden, it's a theme that was so heavily present in the first film, it does make sense, and one that could absolutely sustain the runtime of a film. Just not this one.
You know, it wouldn't kill you to call me mom now and again.
Okay, we got the good out of the way, so let's discuss why they don't stack up to the original. For The Ring 2, I think it is sorely missing Gore Verbinski's talent for visuals. This story, this concept, is a very tricky one to pull off in a convincing manner and not make it laughable. Unfortunately, it just doesn't play without the technical expertise and visual expertise that Gore Verbinski was able to bring to the table. Look, I know all the major contributions Hideo Nakata made for this franchise. In fact, he made this franchise what it is. But between studio interference and who knows how many other problems during this production, he just can't match what Gore Verbinski brought to the first remake.
I'm not your fucking mommy.
All right, Rings. So, what do I like about Rings? I like that they tried to include like a religion versus science theme. So what I don't like about Rings is this movie crystallized everything that The Ring did right by doing it completely wrong. You start off the prologue with Samara crashing a plane, which is just why? Like, what about that conceptually is scary? Nothing is scary about Samara crashing a plane. Conceptually, what makes Samara scary is not terrorism. That's not the type of fear Samara is associated with. What's scary about Samara's curse is where no matter what you do, you will die horribly and alone. I think the emphasis there is alone. There's a loneliness to the concept of the ring that Rings fundamentally doesn't understand. There's nothing else really to say without being excessively negative. So let's move on. So after all of this, I think I finally realize why The Ring remains relevant. It's the scene on the balcony that is the linchpin to why The Ring works, and Gore Verbinski's understanding of what the scene means that keeps The Ring relevant. We see Rachel peer into apartments across from her. On the surface level, we see how TVs have invaded every room and thus everyone's lives. It's hard not to see a version of this in 2024 with TVs replaced with people scrolling endlessly on their phones, or perhaps pinching the air in their Apple Vision Pros while talking to AI women. But I don't think that's enough to keep this film relevant, and thankfully, neither does Verbinski. He includes this vignette. The sequence starts and ends with what looks to be a single mom and her daughter, who, again, looks to be roughly the same age as Aiden, stepping outside for a cigarette. As Rachel peers into this moment of this mother's life, the mom turns to us, her eyes look to Rachel, and that's it. This is the key moment, this interaction between this mom and Rachel. When The Ring came out, we were moving through a shift from analog to digital. And I feel like The Ring came out at the proper time to encapsulate that era's cycle of anxiety. But this interaction is a timeless expression of loneliness that will remain true no matter how many different eras of tech we move through. You don't need to know what a VHS is to be impacted by this scene. And have the many solutions this movie does offer, solving the mystery of the tape, Rachel becoming a more present mom, it doesn't fix the loneliness. The curse can be delivered by anything, a .mov file inside of an Apple Pro 3000, as long as the filmmakers understand this. Okay, that got a little heavy there for a sec. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.